every time we engage with our students, we have an opportunity for mentoring in the moment, right? And that relationship rich culture allows you to have many mentors. Get that? Many mentors. Instead of like one person that is doing all of this stuff. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode number 56 of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips Buck, joined today by Matt Boisvert, our president. Hey, Matt.
Hello. Hi, Rachel.
How's it going?
It's great. It's fall. And you can actually feel it right now. You know?
I know. This is my most favorite month in my most favorite season. So it is, even in Texas, this morning it was 46 degrees, which was pretty nice. So, well, listen, we have delayed this episode. Last week, you and I were both not feeling well, and so we canceled. And
the week before, we were on a trip. We went to a conference.
Mm-hmm. And we're actually going to be traveling next week too. I see some of our friends are joining us. We're going to be both in San Diego and then in Chicago next week. So I'm happy about the timing of this because this is our last chapter in the book that we've been covering, the Relationship Rich Education. So we are going to put some punctuation on this and then dive into some other topics and have other guests. And so I'm really excited about that. But I don't know if you remember that I was challenged by you to do a PowerPoint on Frito pie.
Yeah, that's true.
So this came out of the conversation we were having about faculty doing office hours a little bit differently, like name it visiting hours. And then I was telling you in this book that it said like some faculty are like, a student's talking about something interesting and the faculty is like, hey, can you do just like a quick PowerPoint for us to do next time we meet? And you looked at me like I was insane. Yeah. Is this ringing a bell?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I did a little.
Where's this going, Rachel?
I did a little Frito pie PowerPoint for you. I'm going to show it to you. It's going to take me 3 minutes to go over it as a sample of what you could have your students do with any of their interest. If you're dying to have this PowerPoint, if you're joining us through podcast, so you can't see my PowerPoint, I'm going to talk through it, but in the show notes, we're going to put a little link so that you can download it and you can see how I spent my time this weekend. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Frito pie.
Frito pie. So you remember
according to Rachel.
All you need to know, according to Rachel Phillips Buck, this is a pretty serious topic in my household. As you'll recall, my mom made this for me when I was a little girl, but she made it in kind of a Yankee sort of a way. So I've had to make some adaptations to that. So today we're going to talk about when you should be eating Frito pie, what should be going in the Frito pie, and then a recipe for Frito pie. Okay.
This is awesome.
When do you eat Frito pie? The answer is when you're watching the Giants win in the fall. This is a fall dish. When you're watching the Giants win at the state fair in the stands of a high school football game. This is like a very seasonal food. You're having it in the fall. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Number 2, beans or no beans in Frito pie.
Big debate on this one.
Huge debate. Like families are divided over this topic. Okay. We have a saying in Texas, if you know beans about chili, you know chili ain't got no beans. So that's pretty definitive. No beans in the chili. Also, Carol Hancock, the president and CEO of the International Chili Society, says
so like official
Texas. Yes, because that's just the way it is. So I don't feel like I need to say more about it. That's pretty self-explanatory.
You are a no bean person.
No beans in the chili.
All right.
Okay, the next thing, this is really interesting. You guys may find this to be fascinating. This Gebhardt chili powder is the only chili powder used in your Frito pie. It is the original, created in Texas by a German immigrant who was used to making paprika, which is where you take peppers and you like grind it down into this spice. And he created chili powder. is the very first like commercially available in 1894 under this Gebhardt chili powder name.
You
They
know,
still
Rachel,
create it. It's awesome.
learn something new every day. This
I
is
know.
great. Okay.
It's really great chili powder. It's
okay.
Filipino. Okay. How to eat Frito pie. We've moved on from the ingredients. Now I'm going to give you a quick overview. You have choices, stew meat or chili meat. I prefer stew meat, but I can't fault you if you use chili meat, seeing as how it's labeled as such. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like ground beef versus like chunks. You
But
eat it in a
the
bag.
right choice is stew meat.
Yeah. The right choice is stew meat.
Right.
Okay. You can eat it in a bag. This happens all the time. Like at the fair or the football, you just cut open the Frito bag, the Frito chips, and then you mix everything in. The good thing is it's portable and you don't have to do the dishes. It limits your portion size and it's hard to get the right proportions, but you can cut the top off the bag or you can cut the center. Okay. Choices. Or you can do the bowl approach. This has dishes, but in my house, my Frito pie is called 2-bowl chili because when you have bowls, you eat 2 of it because it's so good.
Yeah.
The correct structure of 2-bowl chili is Fritos, cheese, chili, so it can melt the cheese, and then cheese on top. Yeah, Frito cheese, chili cheese.
So then when you put your spoon in, you've got just a perfect layer.
Yeah? Exactly.
Awesome.
Leftovers are the best for Frito pie. How long does it take chili how long does chili last in the fridge? Nobody knows because you eat it before it goes bad. So it's a great like investment. Eat it for the week. And finally, this is my recipe. This is all I can tell you because this is how I cook. Onions, garlic, chili powder, poblano peppers, green chili, stew meat, crushed tomatoes, Fritos, cheddar cheese, jalapenos on the side, just in the right proportions. Taste it, cook it. It's delicious.
Kirk wants to know, can you add sour cream?
Oh, I didn't even think that I needed to address sour cream in this PowerPoint.
You've opened up a whole bag of Frito pie.
Listen, here's what I'm going to say. I think whatever you add on top is totally up to you. So some people do green onions, some people do jalapenos, sour cream. I do that for my daughter when she was little. It was too spicy. So you could do that. So I'm not going to be bossy about what you put on top, but that is my Frito pie PowerPoint. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
That was really enlightening. You know,
I hope you learned something.
I will continue to ask random questions because if I get a PowerPoint out of it, that's great. That's great. All right. Well,
okay.
I think we're done.
No. Shall we dive into the State of the Union?
Yeah, let's do that. What is the State of the Union?
So Grubhub and Starship, which if you were going to name like a portable robot to deliver food to your students on campus, like instead of people, you should definitely name it Starship. That's what this company did. So Grubhub and Starship have started using robotic delivery of food. The robots can go 4 miles an hour. They can hold up to 3 bags of groceries and they can operate in various weather conditions. So Starship just got $100 million in capital as of March to start funding this initiative for college campuses.
Okay.
I don't know what happens to your campus community when everybody can just order food in. But I think that's already happening. Like, I don't think that's new. I think a lot of students are ordering Grubhub to their res halls.
Yeah.
But we for sure have to think about kind of the unintended consequences of that.
So what's the Grubhub part of this? Like
it's two companies.
They're bringing it to the campus and then they load the robot and the robot goes. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
right,
well, yeah.
Super curious. And anyone listening, let us know how it works.
Yeah. They're trying to reach, they said something about how they're trying to reach the hardest places on campus to reach, which seems kind of weird to me. I don't know how hard places are to get to, but I mean, you were one time teaching a lecture class and somebody had chilies delivered in the middle of it. So
it was pretty incredible. And she was sitting in the middle of the largest lecture hall in the building. So there's probably, I don't know, 20 seats in her row, maybe 15. And she's
she
in
had
the
to like
middle.
crawl over.
Oh, that wasn't distracting.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible. Maybe a robot would have been less distracting.
If a robot just came in and rolled to her,
yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, in our continued saga about ACT and SAT scores, the national average composite score for the ACT and the SAT has fallen. So for the ACT, for the class of 2022, it was 19.8, which is the lowest average score in more than 3 decades. It's the first time since 1991 that the average composite score was below 20.
Wow.
It's the 5th consecutive year in decline of average scores, which I think is relevant because there's some like chatter about how the pandemic broke the SAT and ACT, and the reflection is no, it has been broken. It exacerbated it.
Exacerbated is a great word. Yeah. It amplified.
Yeah. So fewer students are taking it, which we're not surprised about that. What I thought is really interesting, though, is that the ACT breaks down scores by race and whether or not a student has completed core courses in high school. And so there's a pretty huge difference in scores when you break it down that way. So this year, the average score for Asian students for those who had completed core was 26. The scores of every other racial group who had completed the core were less than 23.7. For white students, it was 22.7. For Black students, it was 17.6. And Hispanic students, it was 20. So there's a really big discrepancy on that, which I think, man, if I had stock in ACT and SAT, I would be getting out of it because they have some really systemic issues with that test.
Well, if you wanted to invest in something, definitely helping students level up, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, all of these results really point to what the director of the ACT said: a rapidly growing number of seniors leaving high school without meeting college readiness benchmarks in any subject that they measure. So it's not just that the scores are lower, but they're looking at like, hey, do you have what you need in order to come into college really well prepared? And the answer is a increasing no. So
much to say about that one.
Yeah.
I mean, just upstream thinking on that. Like, how do we, if these are the students who are coming to our schools, what is our plan to help them be prepared for college rigor?
Yeah. I mean, I think especially if you pair it with the FTF 0, right? That's students who are coming with no credits are at a higher risk. So if you could say like, we need to do some leveling up courses in the summer, that's going to get you college credit. So you'll get used to that. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways we can solve that. We maybe need to do a whole cap on gown on kind of the state of the union for ACT and SAT and how schools managing that. I don't know if you guys read this article inside higher ed. It's called Rigorous and Weed Out Are Not Synonymous. It's a pretty interesting article. You heard the news. New York University fired a professor because the students were saying that it was organic chemistry. He was a really hard teacher. He was like, hey, I have to defend the rigor here. And the school was saying, you're not doing a great job. It's kind of like a throwback to
this is, so just to time out or interrupt there, organic chemistry is known as the weed out barrier course for pre-med. So I understand that there are faculty who see that as that's their job. That's actually the way this class is crafted. So starting there, we're going to make it really hard and weed out.
So, but this article is about how a disproportionate number of students who fail that class and fail the sort of cornerstone STEM class for their major disproportionately is underrepresented minority students. And that if they get a bad grade, there are a lot of studies that if the first grade is a bad grade, they leave the field totally, right? So they're not being coached through like this happens and you can study and you have resources and all of that. So this is a faculty member who is talking about a similar teacher at the University of Texas. His name was David Laud. He was teaching organic chemistry. He found that it was a weed out course. Half of his students weren't passing. He looked and he saw a lot of them were first generation. A lot of them were low income, had attended public high schools. So he basically did a control. He took that group that had first generation or some risk factor
So impact cohort.
Right. And created a smaller section of the course with tutors assigned and additional advisors. Content was the same. He gave the same lectures, same textbook, all of that kind of stuff. What's amazing is the result of that smaller section earned the same average grades as those in the regular course, and also graduated 3 years later at a higher rate than students in the large section did. And so this article is just talking about, Matt, you and I said last time we talked about the honors college model, smaller classes, right? More relationship constellations for those students. And what this faculty member said was, I'm going to defend the rigor of my course, but I'm going to figure out a way that these students will be able to be more successful.
Challenge and support. It's just classic.
Yeah, what I love about it is it uncovers that it is not the students that had the deficit. It's not that they were unable to pass. It's the way that this faculty member was teaching was not supportive to them, right? Like made it harder for them to be successful. So I think it's a great conversation to have about how do we tweak what we do to support students who can be successful. We just have to change how we've always done it, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, there's a really dumb article in let me see, where is it? I can't even see where. Oh, maybe higher ed dive. That's about how college leaders can create a culture shift to stop burnout among student affairs and like higher education professionals. Okay. You'll be shocked.
Hold on. We say this again. The purpose is
how college leaders can create a culture shift to stop burnout.
Yeah, okay. So kind of like what we've been talking about.
Yeah, but would you like to know the miraculous findings of the study?
Let's go.
Pay them more, give them better benefits. 70% of college employees surveyed wants to work remotely, at least part-time, which I think is very, very interesting. Because like you and I were saying, I mean, there are a lot of jobs on a college campus that it would be incredibly hard for you to do remotely because it's so relational, because it's so much about collisions and being where the students are and all of that kind of stuff. So interesting.
Hard to be a remote RA or.
Right. Yeah. More money, better benefits, better working schedules. They did a survey that said 2/3 of higher education employees regularly work outside of the standard workday, which is tricky because like RDs is a great example of that. Like your workday is not going to be standard. It's not ever going to be 9 to 5. They also had, let me see if I can find the statistic in here. Oh no, I don't know where it is, but it's something like, 75% of employees don't make enough to live at the standard which they would like, which
to be able to support the lifestyle that their preferred
lifestyle. So that's interesting because I mean, it's not very specific in terms of like, what does that actually mean? Right. Oh, here we go. 37% of higher education workers say their pay allows them to live the lifestyle they would like. So only 37% responded like, yes, this pay allows me to live that lifestyle. So that's tricky.
I want to know who they are, like
low standards, they make a lot of money. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Then the last one, which is my favorite, is value employees' time. Managers should consider limiting meetings and using them for brainstorming and idea creation rather than as tools for information sharing. Right. Which, I am on my high horse about this all the time with our care team. Like, please do not use that to share information about what's happening with your students. You should be using Ferris 360 to manage that so everyone can see it. And then we're going to brainstorm about students that we cannot get in touch with. So I I think it's interesting when they have articles like this and they're like, we found this amazing thing, right? And you're like, no, that's pretty standard.
That's not new.
Pay people well, value their time, show your appreciation.
Don't waste their time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like
Okay.
it. You said it's a stupid article, but I like it because the conclusion is if you're doing these things, wasting people's time, you should use Paris 360, and that's pretty great.
Yeah, actually, Matt, I know you're being funny about that because we think everybody should use Ferris 360. But one of the things that I've seen recently is that practitioners are asking for tools to make them more efficient and effective. And it's not a huge investment, right? We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for this thing. We're not talking about like a position worth. We're talking about a very small investment to make your practitioners more effective and efficient. And I have seen two schools recently where the administration was like, no, we're not doing that. You guys are fine. You don't really need that. And you want to talk about burnout.
Yeah, that's
right?
when you're like, okay.
When I come to my boss and I'm like, I need this thing to be able to be successful and to help our students. And they're like, I don't think you do. I think you're fine. It is a terrible message to send to your colleagues and employees, right? So crazy. Okay. This last one, we have to be disciplined on this, Matt, because I feel like we could talk about this one a long time.
Okay.
But this comes out of a woman named Denise Lampier is writing two articles. This is the first of two articles. When her son, EJ, was about to become a freshman in high school, she said, can we do a longitudinal study about all of the mail pieces you get from different colleges over the next 4 years?
To recruit him. Yeah.
To recruit him to come. So she has just written her first piece about kind of her experience of that. She's a marketer. So she's looking at from this lens of like, what are schools saying and what are they sending me and what's their communication? So over the course of 4 years, her son heard from 90 different colleges and universities, 5,228 emails, 4 military recruitment brochures, 23 handwritten notes, 302 postcards, and 162 view books and pamphlets, in addition to 130 like typewritten letters. Okay, so it's like a lot of stuff that she looked at. And she comes back and says, here are 5 things that I've learned, colleges that you should be paying attention to. The first one is you need to choose your vendors carefully. So as she's looking at this sort of in a macro way, she is getting
you mean third-party enrollment management vendor?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So she's like, hey, we got a bunch of letters, 18, that started with, thank you for requesting this publication, that then came with the college view book or whatever. And she's like, first of all, my son did not request this information, but also it's basically the same form. So whoever this vendor is selling like, here's your admissions stuff that you should do. You should send it between February 22nd and March 11th. That's when all 18 of these letters came with the exact same vernacular. And she was like, okay, so clearly this is not like a homegrown effort. Somebody is telling you this is what you should be doing. Okay. So that I thought was super interesting. Personalize the content. She said that she would get multiple postcards of the same postcards on the same day. So you need to keep your list tidy when you're sending stuff. Make sure you're not duplicating, right? She said virtually the same postcard, but over 2 years, it was 6. She got the same postcard 6 times with just the like view dates changed or the times changed. Yeah. And she's like, but we're looking at it and we know that you haven't adjusted this. It's like you're sending out the exact same thing. Her son also, who is Caucasian, got a note telling him he could win a $500 scholarship for Hispanic Heritage Month. And he was like, you clearly don't know who I am. I cannot do that. Leverage your brand, make sure you're talking about how you're unique. She's like, I looked at all of this stuff and everybody sounds very similar. They're not, they're not making any differentiation. Price, being transparent. She's like, I can't tell you how hard I had to work to find out how much college was going to cost. It was always, it depends. It might be this, it might be this. Her son said one college invited him to, quote, discover his purpose and explain that college is more than just the cost of tuition. And her son said, I knew it was going to be expensive just from those two statements, right? And then the last one is make sure that you are coordinating between marketing, so communication, and admissions, because there are some schools that sent like a crazy number, 345 emails, one college, 345 emails. And then on the other side, they have a school that sent an email. And so she's like, somewhere in there is the right mixture, but don't be overwhelming. And also, we want to know that you're making an effort to actually get my son to come to your school. So pretty interesting.
I'm trying to be very disciplined.
Yeah, I'm just kind of horrified about the idea that you would be sending the exact same letter or email as all of your competitors. You know,
I'd be so mad to find that out. Yeah. What am I paying you for? Well, we all know that trying to recruit 17 and 18-year-old high school students, they're finicky. And especially right now, I mean, if you think about like their lens of influencers as marketers versus a form letter, right? So
yeah, for sure. One thing that she said is letters are the least, like nobody's written the letters. She said there actually was a school that in the middle of it put blah, 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 because, it's like I'm saying about our emails that we send our students that are like,
right, no one's going to read this.
Of text, no one is going to read that. And she was like, he was not reading any of those letters.
When Aiden was going through the process, if he got a letter, he went straight to the signature and tried to figure out if that was actually signed or digitized. And if it was digitized, he didn't read it. So
yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is the State of the Union.
Thank you, Rachel. No, thank you.
Oh, good, because it's too late. I've already closed that segment. We've moved on.
That's great.
Okay, so we're going to talk about mentoring today. I really love this topic because I think it's pretty relevant for our students in a lot of different ways. We talked about the importance of it a couple of weeks ago, and then I told you I was going to give you some really specific ways to think about mentoring. But Matt, I think your reflection on mentoring when I mention it is pretty dead on to how a lot of people feel. So can you just, when I was like, hey, we're going to talk about mentoring.
I hate mentoring. I hate it, but I love it. It is, so why do I love it? Because you get to be a part of a student's story and you have an opportunity to change that student and their family. And so that's really powerful, but I hate it because it just feels so weighty. It's really intimidating. It feels like I'm making a commitment that is going to be time intensive, long-term commitment, a lot of complex issues that I don't have all the answers for. Right. Like I could actually steer someone the wrong way, right? There's just, it feels very weighty. And so when I think about, putting on we're going to have a mentoring initiative or build a mentoring program, it just feels really weighty and it makes me nervous. But today, what I'm excited about is to talk about how you can make it not as weighty. And
so I just want to, I think it's important to say this is coming from people who love mentoring, right? Like, I mean, we do that naturally. That's kind of how you and I are built, is like, okay, what's someone trying to accomplish? We want to do that. Yeah. I would like to reflect on how a faculty member or someone else on your campus, if it is weighty to us, how it feels to them, right? Because it feels like one more hat you have to put on. What's my commitment? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? What are we going to be talking about? And I have talked to a couple of schools where it's like, we have this mentoring program, but we can't get people to sign up for it. And then once they do, they don't know what to do. They're like, what do we talk about? What are we, do I have to go to coffee with them every week, or like, what's supposed to happen?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I really love about this book is that it's saying, if you have a relationship rich culture on your campus, then mentoring is way less formal and way less weighty, right? To use your words, that they want you to think about mentoring like mentoring in the moment, or just in time mentoring, or mentoring on the run. And I like this because we do this, like higher education professionals. When you stop and you see a student and you say, how are you? That counts as mentoring. When you listen to them and reflect back and say, here's what I think we should do, or whatever, right? So we have these mentoring on the run moments all the time. And if you could help faculty to understand, hey, that little time before class when you're talking to your students, and that little time after class when you're talking to your students, you are doing mentoring right then. That is the right thing for you to be doing. I was telling you, Matt, that the sort of responsibility of mentoring, a long time ago, I had a student, and I was given what mentoring is, I was in a mentoring relationship with her. We hadn't named it that, we weren't calling it that, but she was coming and we were talking about what was going on with her. And I was, I was mentoring her.
Yeah.
And she came to me after like a year and a half, and she's like, hey, will you be my mentor? And I was like, well, first of all, I cannot give you more than I'm giving you. Like, I am doing all I know how to do. And the fact that that we haven't named what I'm doing as mentoring makes me nervous, because I'm like, what else can I give to you? Right. I'm in this relationship and I see you and I'm walking alongside of you. And so I think your reflection is right, that it's an awesome practice, but we need to move it out of this like super codified official, like, did you mentor the student? And just say, every time we engage with our students, we have an opportunity for mentoring in the moment, right? And that relationship rich culture allows you to have many mentors. Get that? Many mentors. Instead of like one person that is what is doing all of the stuff, right? So I think that framing is really, really important for the rest of our conversation.
It's good.
Okay, so let me give you some of the guidance that this book gives us in terms of how to do mentoring well, whatever the time frame, whatever the time commitment, however official, whatever. Okay, so the first one is, you have to create space for students to be heard and to be human.
Right.
And this one is really about taking students as they are, without an expectation of what they should be and how they should do things and what they like. You should be at this point, or you shouldn't be doing these things, right? Really taking time and space to understand who they are and why they are that way. Because there is a part of mentoring, which we'll talk about, which is moving students, but you have to, I love unconditional positive regard. You have to be present with your students, where they are, who they are, listen to what's going on with them, in order to be able to make recommendations and suggest how they move forward.
It's so important. Yeah, that it's what we say about this is a whole person. And I was just thinking about, so one, all of the roles of that person. So yeah, they're a student, but if you're just mentoring them as a student, you're missing out on all these other things. They're a child of this family. They're they have this roommate. They're in this sport. I mean, all of those things, and then all of the things that they carry with them, right? So their feelings, their loneliness or homesickness, or
yeah. And if you can connect in that, so we were talking the other day about this idea of having a faculty mentor for a team, right? That I just hang out with the baseball team. I just am there all the time. Like, I'm going to be in the cafeteria Thursdays after practice. I'm just going to like come to practice. And that if you allow them to be people connected to all of those things that you're mentioning, they're an athlete, they love this sport, they come from a place, they have these ambitions, that then the context of that relationship allows these issues to come up, that you can say, hey, I want to teach you how to do this better, or let's talk about this thing that you're really struggling with. So I think that's so important. I was telling you about a football coach who asked his player who's going to be out for the week, hey, will you just send an email to your faculty members and tell them you're not going to be here this week? And then he saw him the next day and he said, did you do that? And the player was like, no, I didn't do it. And the football player was like, okay, you really need to do that. The coach. And then the coach came back to the student and said, hey, do you know how to write an email to your faculty? And the student was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what I should put in it. Like, I don't know how to greet them. I don't know what I should say. I don't know how to sign it. Okay, awesome. Come to my office and let's talk about how you can write an email to a faculty member. But the reason the coach paused there is because he was providing space for that student to be seen. Right? He was reflecting on, why did I ask the student to do this thing and they didn't do it? I wonder if he has no idea how to do what I'm asking him. So I'm going to go back and revisit with that with him.
That's
so
really
good.
good.
I love it. Okay. The next piece I really like about mentoring, as described in this book, is that it's practical guidance and expert knowledge. And this is a piece that I think sometimes we miss because we are so focused, I think rightfully so, on encouragement, motivation, you're doing a great job, everything's, I'm proud of you, all of that kind of stuff, that sometimes we forget, like, these are, in some cases, 18-year-old students who have never done this thing before, and we have to teach them. There has to be very practical knowledge, right? Transferred in that mentoring. And again, it doesn't have to be an hour over coffee every week where you like talk about all the things. It can be as simple as, hey, I'm on my way to a job interview. Wait, you need to change. You cannot wear your basketball shorts to this job interview, right?
They're going to ask you this question. What's your answer? Right?
Right. So I like it because we talked a couple of weeks ago about the importance of discussing with a student, like, what is the meaning of your life and why are you here? And that can is don't wear basketball shorts to the thing, like, let's practice your handshake. When you go introduce yourself to a faculty member, how do you say, like, what do you say? Little things like what you wear and how you pursue things and how you talk to people, and practicing those situations is a huge component of being a great mentor, right?
Absolutely.
They talk about it in terms of getting your hands dirty while you're mentoring. And Matt, you and I have
we know a thing about this. We know a thing or two
so
about
many
this.
examples, because when you have a rich relationship with a student, you teach them how to drive if they don't know how to drive and they're taking their driver's test, right? Which you had that experience. You talk about how to buy a car if that's something that they're doing. You teach them how to cook if that's something that they're interested in doing. And
mock interviews. And I mean, it's fun. Just thinking about that, Rachel, I'm thinking about, so when I say mentoring just feels so weighty, to be able to think about, well, I don't know everything. And like I said, so I'm a little, that makes me nervous. That's okay. I do know some things, and so if I take time with the things that I know, then it's going to be successful.
And also modeling, well, I don't know that. What should we do? Right. So how do I pick my insurance, or how do I pick my major, or how do I whatever? It's really interesting that in some cases I'm an expert. How do you pick your major? Okay. Do you know about you? Can you make good decisions? Do you know about the world of work? Yes or no? So I'm going to help you with that. Then when you're like, how do I pick my insurance company? I'm like, I don't know. But listen, when you're an adult, you mostly don't know anything.
That's probably the best mentoring advice you could give.
Yeah.
Right?
You just have to model, like, okay, well, if I were going to have to pick my insurance, here's what I would do. Let's Google this. Let's look at these reviews. Let's do these comparisons. So even that modeling of, I know you don't know, I don't know either, but let me show you how you kind of make your way.
Let me show you consumer reports, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so making sure that you get your hands dirty. And I actually think for some faculty and for a certain kind of person on your campus, that is going to be refreshing, because they do not want to sit for an hour every week talking about the meaning of your life, but they are more than happy to solve practical, small problems for students that are going to help them to be successful. And that's why that constellation is so important. Because maybe I'm happy to talk to them about the meaning of their life. And then they have somebody else who's like, hey, these are the practical things that I need to give you mentorship on. So I really love that one. The next one is about warm handoffs. And I think there's so much to say about this. I may start changing my language. You know, Matt, we talk about leveraging current relationships, how important that is with your students, where you're saying, they're like, hey, I don't understand my calculus homework. And I'm like, I don't understand your calculus homework either, but we are good friends. And my friend Rebecca is a tutor over in the tutoring center. Come with me. I'm going to introduce you to her and she's going to be able to help you with that. Right. Yeah. We talk about that with early alert, saying like, you don't know Rebecca, but she's going to call you and go see her because she's going to be able to help you. So this idea of a warm handoff is where we're leaning on our existing relationship with a student to then deliver them to somebody who is going to be able to serve a function that we would not be able to serve, right?
I think early alert's just a great example for a campus. When you think about faculty who feel overwhelmed with the idea of supporting a student who's at risk or struggling, and to be able to say, no, I mean, this warm handoff to here's a place where I know they can help you. And all I have to do is walk you there and encourage you in staying engaged in that process. And I'm doing a great job as a mini mentor.
Yeah, for sure. And modeling, I mean, we do want our communities to think about each other as reliable. So it is modeling. I can't do everything by myself, but I have good partners and I have good colleagues that are going to be able to help us do those things, right? The message that you send when you are the only one on campus who can help the student, which we know people like that who are just like, no, they're mine. You can't trust anyone else. Don't go like, and they just get overloaded because they're not sharing that mentoring with their colleagues, right? Who should be doing a good job for that student. So I like modeling, asking for help, and then also making sure you're not the bottleneck. And also you remember in the culture code where they're talking about becoming a connector. I just think, you know, we're talking about collisions all the time, but I just think becoming a connector where you say, hey, so-and-so, do you know this person? Do you know this person? You should meet this person. I want you to, as you're walking across campus, that's how your brain should be thinking for those students.
It, like you said, it's just great modeling. Like, hey, in your life, find experts on these things. Let's go find an expert on that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, you had a faculty member who did this connecting in class, right?
Well, yeah, he was amazing. I've talked about him before. Don Drennan. He was amazing. Second day of class. It's a long. He just had us fill out an index card. First day of class that had your name and some different things of interest, and then like, where are you from and what do you like to do? And second day of class, he just spent without any notes. He just connected people in the class. Hey, Matt Boisvert, you want to know Eldon Foskey? You're both from Seattle and like to ski. So if you don't know each other, what are you doing? You got to get to know each other. Yeah. That really changed how I thought about him, but also thinking about, so then when I was in the classroom teaching, I knew how powerful that was to know a student's name, know something about them, and try to connect them. So it was, Don Drennan. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, so we want to have those warm handoffs to our colleagues who are going to be part of their mentoring constellation. And I also would say, I mean, we've been laughing about how many times I say relationship constellation, mentoring constellation, but I actually think if you talk about mentoring on your campus like that, everybody settles down because like you said to start, I am your mentor. Oh my gosh, I hope that I don't do a terrible job for you.
Especially, right? Yeah. So we're not assigning you to a student. You're going to have collisions built in, and those students you collide with, this is what it looks like. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, the next one, 4 out of 5, is this one. I don't know if I might cry about this one because it's pretty meaningful, but it is about how mentoring is incredibly important in your lowest moments, in a student's lowest moments.
Yeah.
So thinking about when you have failed, how vulnerable you are to influence and input because you are feeling off balance and uncertain and ashamed and all of those things. And so you're really, really vulnerable to influence from another person. And thinking about how in places like student conduct, academic recovery, academic dishonesty, right? These places where you have made a mistake, there is an opportunity for somebody to speak unconditional positive regard to you, wisdom. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be gentle in your mentoring, right? One of the stories in the book is that this dad came in and was like, went to the president of the university after his son graduated and was like, I have a check and it's in the name of your dean of students because when my son was a freshman, she kicked him in the pants and got him to do what he needed to do. Like he was starting to go off on this path and she was like, hey, you need to straighten up. You're making terrible choices. And that was a moment of mentoring for that kid that his dad knew about and came back and said it was super important what she did there.
Yeah.
So that reflection of when students are in their lowest point, they are very, very open to being mentored. And it doesn't necessarily have to be gentle. It does have to be, like I said, unconditional positive regard, but it doesn't have to be like, okay, well, how's it going? And what are you thinking? And, those sorts of things. I don't know if you have a reflection on that.
Well, this is a new one I haven't thought about in a long time, but I had an outbreak of plagiarism in one of my classes. It was a very involved writing assignment project all semester long. And I'm very good at finding plagiarism. And so they didn't know that, I guess. It was like 8 students in my class which was about an eighth of the class. And I called them in, and it's interesting because there were like 3 who didn't come back, didn't just drop the class. Huge assignment, they're going to get an F. Okay, that's how you chose to deal with that. But I had a student who I'm sitting across my desk and I'm telling him, here's consequence and what you need to do to recover. And he starts shaking in his eyes. He closes his eyes and he starts really heavily shaking. Tears start coming out, and then he's embarrassed that he's crying in front of me. And I just came around the desk and sat next to him and said, hey, it's okay. We're going to walk through this together. You're okay. And
Yeah.
it was you all know, when you have these moments, very intense opportunity. Well, that kid, of course he recovered. And on graduation, introduced me to his family who had come from Malaysia to be there for his graduation. And it all made sense to me, all in that moment, the weightiness. I'd never seen a student take that on like that. And then the opportunity to just be with them and be connected to him from then on, really powerful reminder for me. So we have, all of us know a student in a low moment. And it's so easy to just say, that's going to be messy. It's going to be really messy to get involved in that. But wow, what a powerful opportunity to be with them. And then, I was telling you about a student who his grandfather paid for him to go on the study abroad trip that I was on, and that I was teaching in Oxford. And this kid messed up big time and had to be sent home. And there's just no way around it. I'm really sorry. You messed up big time. You have to go home. And I could tell there's a lot of shame and weightiness about that because his grandfather paid for him to go. And now he's not even, but I stayed in touch with that student. He dropped out of school and I stayed in touch with him. And just the other day, he got his master's. I messaged him on LinkedIn. And it's powerful, right? That he's like, hey, you never gave up. And I think that that's where it's I hate mentoring, but I love it because when you take these moments, that wasn't a lot of deep investment in his life. It was just taking a moment to tell him he's still unconditional positive regard. He's still important and he has value. And I it's so cool to see that how
Payoff.
that changed him, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I have more to say about that, but let's do.
You're making me tear up here, Rachel.
I told you that's a really hard one because if you
Yeah.
like not only done the mentoring, but if you've ever had that experience in your life, I was saying about mentoring, and I'm going to actually talk about number 5 is mentoring relationships leave legacies. I was saying that we have these moments where somebody said a thing to us at the right time that we will never forget, right? That sticks with us forever. And it can be a really small exchange. It's like our friend Holly, who's like, I was going to my res hall and somebody said, "Hey, Holly." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, maybe I belong here. Like maybe I'm going to be successful here," right? That's one word somebody said to her. And
Yeah.
in that micro expression of mentoring, she felt like maybe I have a sense of belonging here. So it is such a powerful thing to invest in on our campuses. And if you think about people who have mentored you and the legacy that leaves, I was saying to you, Matt, when I was young and stubborn and prideful, my husband and I were buying our first house, and it was a pretty contentious process. Like the other people were like, "You're going to do this. We don't want that." Like they were not giving it all, like in the process, they were being super bossy. And so I had a grandfather who I was complaining to, like, "Hey, I'm really unhappy. They're being bossy. They're making me do this. I don't know why I have to jump through all these hoops. Like, what do I get out of this?" And he said to me, "Rachel, you get the house." Okay. So that's 4 words that he said to me in that mentoring moment, which totally reset me in the place. Like, right, why am I getting so bent out of shape about all this stupid stuff when the truth is the outcome of this is the goal? That is what I need to keep my eyes on. I need to just let all of this other stuff go and press forward to this goal, right? That was 20 years ago. And to this day, when I am getting bent out of shape about a bunch of stupid stuff and taking my eye off the prize, I hear him say to me, "Rachel, you get the house." And it resets everything in my brain. I'm like, "Oh, right. Okay. I need to change. Like, I've got to focus on something different." It is a great example of this little nugget of wisdom that he gave me that for the rest of my life moves me into a different brain space just because of those 4 words that he said to me, right? Like I lean
Yeah.
on that often. It is such a legacy. And I'm sure if I ask him, he'd be like, "I don't remember. I have no idea about that conversation where I said that
Yeah.
to you." But it is such a foundational pushing point for me, right? In my brain.
Yeah. I think we all have these little nuggets someone has said to us
Yeah.
that helps reset.
And I think it's helpful to reflect on those because you realize in your own life, "Rachel, you get the house." That is a powerful moment for me. It's so small. I have another faculty member where I got in trouble and I had to come in and sit at this table, and I had 4 faculty members facing me and I was supposed to sit opposite from them. And when I came in, my favorite faculty member stood up from that line, walked around the table, and came and sat next to me, right? That took her 4 seconds to do. And it is a moment, a mentoring moment for me that changes the way I treat people moving forward, right?
Yeah.
It's important to reflect on those things because they're so small that it gives us perspective that these many mentoring engagements can be incredibly powerful without it being a huge investment in time, right? It is a person seeing you and saying or doing the right thing at the right time that then lasts forever, changes you moving forward. Do you have more you want to say about that?
It just changes also, hopefully, how when you have that experience, it should shape or you should want to seek that opportunity out to provide that to someone else, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you know what a gift that is. So
And we love it because you get to be part of that story. Like you
yeah.
get to be part moving forward of the stories I tell my daughter about how Bappa said this thing to me, right? That is not just in the moment for me. That is a perpetual part of the story that he has for the rest of my life and, you know, for my daughter's life as well. And so I think figuring out how we change the language and the expectation of mentoring so that people can recognize that they're doing it, that it's not a huge investment in time, that it's just saying the right thing and being present with your students at the right time, I think is incredibly important. I was thinking about this, Matt, with this definition of mentoring. You know, I think part of the reason why student affairs and academic professionals are getting burnt out is because of the last 2 years taking some of the collisions that we have with students to be able to do these little mentoring, micro mentoring. And so it is such a powerful thing to be able to say the right thing at the right time and change a student's course. When you have that removed, I mean, it's a big reason why so many of us do the work that we do, because we like that investment in students. And when you have students coming back and being like, nah, nobody has to come to campus, it's fine, I'll just join by Zoom, and you know.
Or with your State of the Union article where you have these people who they just want to work remotely. I don't
Yeah.
think you understand the real heart of the work that happens on
And
a campus.
and perhaps the value that comes from having these little collisions with students all across campus where you can speak truth or, you know, rebuke or whatever you need to them, so that at the end of the day you're like, wow, I impacted a lot of students today just by walking to the cafeteria, you know, or whatever. Okay, so really recommend this book. It has a bunch of questions for you to consider. I just want to give you a couple of them. Are you using formal and informal moments to meaningfully engage with others? I think that is the primary question. And I think if I were pitching mentoring, not in some heavy, big, like, you know, prescribed way,
Yeah.
but just saying like, hey, I want you to be a mentor. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to use formal and informal moments to meaningfully engage with others. Are you taking time to offer practical knowledge and guidance, as well as encouragement and support to those who need it? And then, are you helping create structures on campus that will ensure more students are engaged in mentoring conversations? And that one, I think, is one we have to wrestle with a little bit. What does that look like? How can we do it? Who do we invite, right? It is at the crux of this idea of a relationship-rich culture, which is that we are creating places and structures and practices that get students to collide with people who can listen to them and provide some sort of, you know, wisdom or knowledge to them. So,
And I just think it's so important in this piece that you be very intentional about the students who tend to hide, the Rachel Phillips bucks of your campus, those who would slip through the cracks, or they're not going to the typical collision places. And so
yeah,
being intentional about finding those students instead of everyone doing little micro mentoring to the top 20% of your campus. That's the easy group. It's finding the bottom 20%, those who are most likely to leave your campus and feel unconnected, unseen. Those are the ones to be really thoughtful about. How do we find and engage them?
Yeah, I'm glad you ended with that, Matt, because I really think that's the challenge as we're thinking about creating structures. So if we think about me as a college student, it's not that I was resistant to mentoring, especially the sort of micro mentoring. It's not that I was resistant to it. It's not that I was like, no, I hate everybody, I don't want to talk to. It's not that. It's that the way to find me didn't exist, right? So I would have been hungry for somebody to say, hey, I'm from the Northeast too. Come have dinner. Let's talk about these crazy Texans. I would have been hungry for that piece. I really would have. I would have been like, help me out.
That's great.
So I don't think that those students are adverse to mentoring. I think we just have to figure out the structure to get to them, to be able to provide them with these kinds of relationships that are going to change their experience on campus. So I think it's great. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will not be here next week, but the week after we will. And we are going to unveil our next book that we're going to talk about, as well as some guests that we have coming. Dr. Sherry Woosley is going to join me in a couple of weeks. I know I told you guys about the survey that she did about student affairs professionals. And so she's now has a bunch of reflections about what that data is telling her. So that is going to be a really fun one. I think that's maybe the first or second week of November. So that will be good. So always good to see you guys. Yeah, you're doing great work. Thanks for sticking with us. Have a great day. Bye.